Good morning, Genrinpoche Tachilale. And good morning, Katrina. Thank you so much for your translation. And welcome to everybody who's joining us online. We'll begin with some prayers, and you'll find the link in the chat box. And so we'll begin. To the teacher endowed, transcendent, destroyer, oneness, gone, foe, destroyer, completely and fully awakened one, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, one gone to bliss, nor of the world, supreme guide of beings to be tamed. Teacher of gods and humans, to you the Buddha endowed, transcendent destroyer, glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, lay cock frames and go for refuge. When I was supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you paced 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise, then I bow. With pure bodies formed supremely fine, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, supreme guide, to you I bow. With a supreme science, face like a spotless moon, color like gold, to you I bow. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not incomparable, wise one, to you I bow. Great compassionate protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good qualities, vast as an ocean, to the Tathagata I bow. Through purity, freeing from attachment, through virtue, freeing from the lower realms, unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the Dharma that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path of freedom to, well established in the trainings, the holy field endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha I bow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, a bubble. Clouds, the conditioned things as such. Through this merit may sentient beings attain the state of all-seeing, subdue the foe of faults, and be delivered from the ocean of cyclic existence, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, o'erland, sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you, may all beings enjoy this pure land, venerable holy gurus. In the space of your truth body, from billowing clouds of your wisdom and love, let fall the rain of the profound and extensive Dharma, in whatever form is suitable for subduing sentient beings. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamniriyatayami. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhist, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
뭐야, 다 닉송겠나?
나야. 아야. 어때야 계속 침부 시월에 송래 주주가 송도 내가 그래 어 뭐들 대부터 비슷해면서 근데 저번에 기회가 있으니 제대로 참으면 제룸 나서라 제대로 참으면 제룸 내스 천하 공실이야 천천가데 봐 timba mambo tipshani nagunche chawara tinde tangi nakarina nagunche te atisugara chidar chamu mina memba nabo tobuse timba mambo kote ibekas chidar chamu mina tin rum nes ta chenga de ko nagunche te bekechira na logyu kechi ramna de batars tene chamcheliya lo kechi chiksam shikyogu yare sigara lo kechi chiksam sharku yare kyogu yare se no 제 참으면 좀 로주 계지 되게 로주가 되게 괜찮네 아니 내주기 지대치 소도도 세부 제제 계지 지른 거 통고요 그래서 거라 멤버 매버셔지 디고 매버셔 개와져서 거라 개와 삼을서 거라 계지 직상 봐 세부 통고요 그래서 디나시에서 거라 참으면 좀 제대 디고 삼을 그 남주티시제 아니 로주에 kenji 아니 또 수세부지 통야지 멤버 매버지 수세부 통야지 교주에 배셔라 지가 참으면 좀 로주 계지 ram나된 바다 로주에 kenji 계지 찍은가 아니 배 수도 세부지 멤버 매버지 통하나 신소라 티 교회 벨셔라 대신 산제 토의 경험난 지대선은 로주 통가 중세 대신도 산재기 투질을 떼내서 오라. 당근지 산재도 전주선 같은 데도 고급질을 가라서 최대 같은 데 더 산재기나 전주선 같은 데 더 같은 데 연구를 해내 단다 산재기 전략이 왕게 삼삼을야 최지 자고래 삼개와 두고래 삼 디버방고래 삼사고 삼로도 삼삼을야 이 천동지 기기 어레셔라 대신 산재 투이 갈람나서 galgasi sita zamla sayarishira. Gainani chikshaba sita zamji sayarishira. Tishi sanje tu galamnan jiden sunam de kevele chao nyambe no lobe kechi chikse samsanglia tenish kivyare sora. Tishi sanje tu galamnan jiden sunam loto tanga chungse. Tende sonza 나라주 대다부터 빼지 아니라 대대 개와 냠총 개와대 빼 냠총주다 특별 대신도 톱첨보 예배 근데 사팅게 갑질에서 거라 나라주 상마 어디인데 특별히 봐 빵바다 개와 주발에 안 배수 숙첨부 자고래 송고도 야 어디실라나
So here, as the great master Shantideva has said in his guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life, now here he gives this example of just like from the great darkness. So we can imagine like there's a very dark night covered over with clouds. It's kind of a thick darkness in which you can't see anything. And so that sort of long dark night is likened to our regular non-virtuous kinds of attitudes, and just how in such a long dark cloud-covered night there can be a flash of lightning that just for a moment, due to that illumination, we're able to see all of the various forms around. And this is likened to our virtuous thoughts. I mean, sometimes in the course of all of those many non-virtuous thoughts that we have, like this long dark night, we have a flash of a moment of having some kind of virtuous thoughts, like the way that in a long dark night, we can see all forms clearly for just a moment when there is an illumination from a flash of lightning. And so too, likewise, through the power of the Buddhas, very occasionally, like once in a very long amount of time, due to the power of the Buddhas, we have some kind kind of virtuous thought. So really, through the power of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who have come in the past, due to their blessings, the kind of inspiration that they have given us, sometimes for just a moment, it's sort of like at the very edge of being possible. We have a kind of thought of, I'm going to do something virtuous. We have these thoughts, but they come ever so rarely. So when we think about how really our virtue is ever so feeble and our non-virtue is ever so strong, really this is making an encouragement that we should make an effort at virtue. When we have those moments of virtue, we should try to strengthen them. And our non-virtues being so powerful, we should make an effort to reduce them in any way that we can.
Oh yeah. Tindu ta tanda ka suresana. Ngarazu tanda susu simbil fata te chigina. Tiba mambo sa dengi chidaro. Kyo pe samsal sidatam. O sa dengi kyo de nyam chungjung chi. Kyo de shindu top chimbo. Ane chik namin debu de pa meseba tsokyu meba. Nami pe nyawaida tandula soba de pe sab chimbo. Tunge sab chimbo nyom kongege. O tiba pe sab chimbo shibutande sa si te kyo de sura. Ne kyo de nyam chungjung inde tat pe sabso cheche. Kyo de pa top cheru ta. Tiba de ma top churu ta. Mechen di nalia. Nyeri mechen nalia. Lunga yesum jikone. Tiba sa etu pa nyoru ta yeshe. Kyo de te maru ta yeshe. Tene teza mayimba. Sende chikbu tiba mayimba. Kyo thongma meba ne sa shikbe ta. Tiba ngaranju mademba mado tsab shibu shibitende sa shivara. Kyo thongma meba ne tindre shiji che tiba top chimbu sagi. Ngen kyo de be she chunjung. Sida tamchi che tete be sheji re te ora. Tende mangcha de ko tiba namin debu nyongko yari sundu chati yor to. Tende ko tab lekba chil ko tiba di yang ko shakpa che ne taya yo chire te ora. Taya meba yene enda kanga nyaya rinpa to chiya ke yo mara. Inde ko tiba di liyan gyoba che ne. Tiba di yang mangcha wate samjang tene sagdo chizo nan rite te. Rawa. Ta sanje de cho da tende lu kuwa tabola soba kapkala yobgun mato. Mangcha wate tiba di samjang la chawa cheba la soba. Ti yongore. Ti inde chedde liya. Samjang liya rada ale samjang tamje chida macho ne. Soso nyamdo yo tenki tizo liya rawa. Ene chamba da chawa da. Tizo nyamdo tete lunga yesum kone tiba masaya kanyo chiya. Rawa. Jesu irama do tiba masaya chik. Oh. Tizo nene kyawa thoma mebune sa shebe. Tiba tizo kangala shakpa che. Tizo ndala cha oda cheba piwa la soba. So chamba da nyingi. Simjang la pensam chaya de. Nebe simji tiba mabu sa yora. Pembe simji tiba te taakira. Tiende ko nyeri mechina kacha yina susu tili yungachi tine pa kyadab keche. Shenla pensam shukshimbo che. Shenla nyeri mechina la shenla tsawa me yunga che. O tipe nyeri mechina samlu tanga yina. Tikba le shakpa che ata chedili tinde chi tikba sagu me nyunyu chigi samsa tembe na. Ko nyeri yaaru nugu yusara. Garanzu te tonas mebe che ko tinde re she de she nyena. Jigwe sundrisi te de loksu chasora. Kichido ene semla namsan juwa te mebre chagdwa. O ti indu ta kandar. O nyeri mechinala. Kyawa sa katu. Tikpa pon katu. Teza mayimba kyawa thoma mebane sashibe tikpa tayatunda. Chamba da nyiji chanjugi semla soba. O tezula samla nyeri mechinala ta. Nyeri susu kyawa karicheso, tikpa karicheso sam siksha ta. Oh, tikpa sabata su nyeri temba che, gyoba che, kyawa sabata le chesu rangi kyawa la chesu ranche kudwa. Oh, tiringa kyawa yandida di tuktu su yabu chonsu samsa, oh, kawa komba. Oh, tinde chene tanda. Oh, rimye ne tobata samba komba chene, simje tamje liya nyeri meba. Simje tamje ki tena tuktu gengi. Kyo kuse yonde kunde ji kansa shilan gyura che yin sam. Te che tu tanda nyeri mechinal kyo nare yina kaa nyunyu che pa kyo ndu tene tore che. Yonde nare yina te yonde te zamayinba tar chimba. Chimba dan soba dan samden la soba tar chimbe gyur che sam. 타도 산게게 고반토게 줄줄시 섬 된데게 공로세 담네 샘버쇼 스네데 그래 야
So here, the meaning of this is that really, if we examine our mind, like on a regular basis, we'll find that we're most habituated to non-virtue. And really, our virtuous actions are so feeble, so weak. We have accumulated all of these kinds of actions that will lead to ripening results that are going to be suffering. We have accumulated so many actions that will lead us to have to experience a very grave kind of results from that. And so the way that we are able to overcome this really is by in this very life, day to day, trying to reduce our non-virtuous actions and increase our virtues. In addition, paying attention to, even though we don't recall them, the kinds of non-virtues that we have done in past lives. We have accumulated so many negative actions that are very powerful, and we really have only very occasionally come to engage in virtuous actions. And so here we are able to, through generating regret and engaging in a process of confession, purify those negativities that we have accumulated. If we couldn't purify our negativities, then everyone really would be stuck in the lower realms, in the hell realms and so forth. But rather, we have the kind of ability to purify those negativities. And most of the negative actions that we have done are in relation to other sentient beings. We harm them. We engage in actions that are hurtful to them. So, although it is possible that occasionally, say, we show disrespect to the Buddhas and so forth, most of our non-virtues are in relation to other sentient beings. And so here, paying attention on a daily basis of how we act toward other sentient beings, how we do toward them in terms of our actions of body, speech, and mind, trying to eliminate any sort of harm that we can that we might do, and trying to benefit them as much as we are able to. Again, the really important regular actions that we need to engage in are increasing our virtue, trying to eliminate those kinds of negativities that we are doing, and confess, generate regret for those actions that we have done in the past. And the best way really to purify those actions that are harmful to other sentient beings is by training in benefiting them, however much we are able to, not harming them, and developing love and compassion and bodhicitta and so forth. And so really this is something that we need to understand is a daily practice, is something that we have to engage in. We can get in this pattern of just listening to and explaining these various things, but if we don't actually change our actions, how we relate to those around us, then we won't really benefit from this. We should, as much as we are able to, again, try to train our minds in benefiting others and do as much as we can to reduce any kind of harm that we are doing to others. And this really is a process of examining our mind on a daily basis, recalling the kind of virtues that we have done, we can rejoice in them. Recalling those non-virtues that we have done, we can engage in a practice of purification. Rejoicing in our own and others' virtues is a very powerful way to accumulate positive merit. And so here, as we are listening to these teachings, we should think that in order to be able to really truly benefit other sentient beings, I myself will become a Buddha, a being who has eliminated all faults and developed all good qualities. And for that purpose, I will, on a day-to-day basis, try to eliminate any of my own faults, every single one of those little faults, and to try as much as I'm able to engage in every virtuous positive action I can, with the ultimate goal of attaining that state of Buddhahood for the benefit of other sentient beings. And so we should set our motivation for listening to these teachings. 고객님도 ¿qué dices? Oh, yeah. Dixon.
고소해
응.
야야 어야 바꿔 단다디 제기요 야 제제 추서
你是在处有啥嘞？
야 니스 주의 하고 그게 맞아
Just getting the text arranged properly.
내남 군도 최동신 셔주래.
나를.
뭐가? 뭐가? 이스터도 자다 이스터도 다 이스터도 요래 안기고 료니번 이스터도들 설가. 내는 뭐도 최동시 사셔라.
내는
뭐도 최동시.
So we'll be picking up with verse 26, or 126. King, if you undertake deeds that begin with Dharma.
이따가
Leonie Parwa.
너도 샤샤도 컨트롤도 가리는 미시. 어제래 내는 거지. 오야 당한도 때려서 당한 좀 어디 줄라 라바트 땡기도 와. 뭐도 라타 메고바 도베 줄라 라바트 땡기도 와. 딜라리아트니 전전도 가셔시. 로 뭔데 줄라 찌르라바 땡바세. 개발시한 라바세로. 진짜 가셔도 와. 다티나네 뭔데 줄라 찌르라바틀이야. 얘네 팽영한 된지 줄라 라바세치. 로 여바다 담배 줄라라바다 담지 다 담보리 팽영한 된지 얘네 뭔데 줄라 라바세트다. 디가르스나 아니 레남 건도 최동신세 로 파르도 춘데 타마르야세 네 춘데 주베 얘네 가래 사다네 대단신도 내미 유르세 어쇼로가 티라 다들 가르성도세네 로 영아 예성제 레 가르사바 예나야스고라 레남 건도 최동신세 꿀론데 소소레 일루다 나다 예지 삼로 가르코고이나 꿀론데 삼로 땅고라 꿀론 삼로 땅니 티파 개월에 줄tab게 롱마단다 미게 와다 텐데 삼로 땅 롱아이스 돈 티파샤 개 꿀론게 군헬라네 니파 담보텔 꿀론도 개와야 보치 삼로 땅고래서 거라 레남 건도 최동시에서 로 르당가다 예지레 자오 가르치어 이나야 대응은도 기회 아니 최기 삼을 정도 땅고래 스쿨로 되신 거라 아니 내는 것도 최자 바르도 춘된 타마리 아서 바로 들려 자와데 제베 갑들려 기회 섬기 아니 로아 샬라 차와 밤바다 펜베 셈라 서버 꿀로데 겨와 기회 돈에 내가 지금도 왜 뒤따고요라 바르도 로아 바르도 춘된 타마리아 타마리 겨와 야부트 차수네 제수 일하시고 교회 삼로 글령아 예수님 저와 가르치는 담보 삼을 텐데다 로마대래도 가르도도 다티 교회 삼 꼴로 유라체 바도 저와 제베 qabla 교회 삼로 마야와체 타마 제수라 교회 삼로 다네 어딘데 전에니 레사고 돼서 거라 레남도 최동시 최수의 교회 삼로 거라 바도 춘데 바도 티제 타마리아 아니 춘데 주베 사다나 어딘데 다 개볼 지다 개볼 송교하데 나라도 사말 송교하라 사다네스도 사이다부 개볼들 송교하라 디다 셴도 내메줘서 어딘데 자올 슈바이네 개복의 시장에서 소바 대조 천대라 야고 개와 치마를 랑샤를 패게 어떤들 요리를 송고도 대신도 가라주 저 가르쳐나 소소령아 예송기 삼로 가르도 깨져 가르셔도 개와다 메개와 롱마데 가르도도 다쳐셔고도 뒤에는 롱마데다 메개와 삼로 돈에 대주시다 개와를 주답세 내 바로 자원을 시급라 타마체 수이라서 뭐 어떤데 거네 개와데 야구치 사야게 삼로 당고래 송고도 어디 따단다 쇼르가디테 방아다 최응한den지 라라바스도 태영한den지 개발라바스 어딜이하다 쇼르가 당보다 뒤 니스터도 잡더니가 된 것도 어야 야 됐소나
So here we have then arrived, and in terms of the outline where we are at, this is talking about the actual sort of causes and effects of higher rebirths. And this begins by exhorting us to accomplish the causes for such good rebirths. And there's speaking about that in general, and then sort of the particular kinds of causes that one should accomplish. So here, verse 126 begins with sort of telling us that we should train in the cause that is endowed with these 5 benefits. And it reads here then in verse 126, King, if you undertake deeds that begin with Dharma, have Dharma in the middle and Dharma at the end, you will not be harmed in this world or the next. Now, here, whatever actions we undertake with our body, speech, and mind, really it is saying that we need to think about our motivation, that we should be undertaking these actions with a virtuous motivation, setting aside any kind of negative motivation or even a neutral kind of a motivation. We need to think well about what we are doing as we undertake an action with our body, speech, and mind. And not only at the beginning should we examine our motivation, but while doing that action, we should carry through this intention of causing no harm and being of benefit. Whatever sort of virtuous intention that we undertook that action with, we should carry it through engaging in that action. And here at the end, then, as it says, it should be a dharma at the end, meaning that after we have completed this virtuous action, we should rejoice in it. So again, removing any sort of neutral or negative kind of a motivation, we should have that at the beginning in terms of our intention for undertaking that, carry that through to the end, and finish that with a dedication. And so here, where it says dharma, this is really referring to having that kind of virtuous thought. And here, this is addressed to the king. It actually says sort of like Lord of the land, but this is advice to all of us as well, right? If we act in this way with this kind of care of our intention at the beginning and carrying that through and making a dedication, this will be beneficial to us in the present life and the future. So really, this means that we need to examine our own mind on a regular basis, try to change any kind of negative or neutral motivation to something that is virtuous, holding that thought through the act itself, and really then carrying that through with a dedication. So here, this topic of training in the cause that has these 5 benefits comes in this verse 26 and then the next 27.
Oh yeah. 다 배영하데 마시기도 와쇼로가 이스tabde더라. 저 배영하데 시기도 와. 최근 데이터 대화당하시도 최단 투배네 자와체베 이나시고도 이제된 데이터네 소소 개보이나 소이나 명약부 연구도 년자 연구에서라 계좌다 지측량보 딜레가 배차와 야구치고를 야구에서 년자 투구에서라 네 대바 마체베 첸델리아 최단 투배래가 제외다 네 대바 마체베 소소를 잡아게요 말을 내가 야구체베에서 가 연구를 마도 당연히 야구체 마서 삼삼 개발용 말했어라. 네. 시간은 지금 매바 다세. 그래서 현대 작 최제 현대 작마다 대화체시라. 얘는 뒤다 치마는 지금 매 현대래야 지금 매바서라. 현대래 지금 대바 마셔ben 개발 매배 네, 교반매배치 이 대화다. 이 대화지. ine me da me mai also me mai be never maybe never maybe diri jigba meba che dele ya ko jina da chi tinde meba mema ye to zo chi ke wa ya bo samru ta ko lo ya bo samru ta na ko never che to yung me sara a zo nge ma chi tum de ji sha yu ba never che ge ma bo chi chu cho che ane te ba cho che ge chi tele never che ge chong du cho re se ko za ane te na ne chi ga nga te ko never che tu sa ma re ko ta ba chen ga ran zo ka ge tan da samru ta ne cham cha la mu che te de do sa re chi tum지 시에 연구와 어디나시면도 되네 가서래 대바 마치면 여바 매바다 자 미매게 차와 매베 지바 매바다 시가라몰이야 년전 지바 매바다 내손을 깨면 삼사근 지바 요마로 대바샤 쳇들게 월랍 붙게 근데 삼로 계획하는 마신도 그 사다 멜리게 하지 그 다시더라 네 지된 셴도 텐트에 주게 셴델에 야고지 개와 야고토선 지와 치마텔야 텐트라다 미고바다 텔라 내르로 저 부숨 쳐벌어 써봐 디아 대와 고네 공도 배워 텐트에 줄도 됐으래 그라 지된 셴도 텐트 대와 개바세 어디도 평양하고도 삼로다지 평양하에 따도 다 퇴배권에 시기 저와 근데 장바에나 최다 퇴배권에 장바데 장고래 계속도 다시 장게이나 당가라서 가가 수이나 소소 내가 지었던 일이 몇이나 내가 마무요라 어때서 집에 걸려 근데 평양하도 통계배 꾸는데서 야구 삼을 단 지역으로 songo도 어야 된대서
So here, the five benefits then come in the next verse as they are listed. So here, by through doing Dharma, you attain fame and pleasure. You have no fear now or at death, and in the next world you will have great joy. So devote yourself always to the Dharma. So here, when it comes to whether we are an ordinary being or whether we are a king or whoever it might be, by doing virtuous, positive actions, you are praised. You have a good kind of reputation. People look well upon you in this life. So that's the first kind of benefit that is listed, is that here in this world, one will have a good reputation or will have praise. And by not doing any sort of negative actions, you will be able to have a kind of happy mind. So here, when we talk about not having done negativities, this means that there's not going to be any sort of regret at the time of death. You can face death without feeling a kind of fear or regret. And so too, by not doing harm to others, you don't have that sort of fear, particularly of harm from non-human forces. Now, there are many sort of stories about this, wherein maybe non-human forces come to do some sort of harm, but it is a Dharma practitioner, and recognizing that this is a being who only does benefit. They're not, those sort of harmful forces aren't able to do the harm that they intend to. There are stories sort of like that. So when we have a way of being that is acting according with the Dharma, we are less likely to experience those kinds of harm from negative forces such as that. And here it also says then we are able to die without regret. So not only do we experience a kind of happier mind in this life as we go through it, but at the time of death, by having a virtuous mind, it is decisive that we will go to a birth as a human or a god. And so in this way, as it says then that you will have no fear now or at the time of death, and in the next world you will have great joy. So devote yourself always to the Dharma. So here, seeing these kinds of benefits, we should therefore act in ways that accord with the Dharma. Now here, this is sort of specifically speaking to royal policy and the way that a king should conduct himself, but this is also advice for all of us, that we should in every way possible act according to the Dharma in our day-to-day actions.
뭐야? 다 니베리 다 담배 룰라 라바시도 Nibadi ba to chile sko do so ya. Nibara. Da si jang de gibu dambe lu su de che dan tumbe jang la jang gu re su wa da. Dam che si jang de dambe lu dan tumbe che dan tumbe chen jang gu re su wa da. Di ka do su ne che ne lu ji damba de se che dan tumbe chen si jang de si de che dan tumbe jang de ne gibu damba nam ji che te da tumbe chen jang gu re su wa da. Ngonde chö nese, ngondo ngazo, tanam jyo ngazo ma ngonde chö chudu la soba ti mena, kaze chinda chudim sewa se, tamjo lambo che se, te ngonde chö tuzu sungi wara, tezu da timba che nese. Chö ne logi tamba te se de, ngonde chö ne kebo namje, ne si ki lo kyambe tamba te se, kebe kesi kyangi ne lega kari che na chö da timba che pa che we na, tiene kesi ki tamba chok tu chuba te re so wara. Che ne lo ge tamba de se. Te kare se na tamba de chotu juba de se ra. Lo ge tamba de che gen jigden wang du tu ne jigden kawa de. Che dan tumba che ge na sama ne jigden de kanga da tumba che jigden la wang ju che da lega che kanga tebu che yo ra. Ne jigden kawa jo de kona kebe chawa che da tu kanga mi manga su kanga kawa yo go de se ra. Che gen jigden ngonga jo. Chödan tümbe seykana jiden ngombar kawa yoruse. Jiden kawari göbeyken dedan şendülümü. Chiso de kanga kabu çedin çawa meba kabu çedin sonra sendele rağında şen çama tevare kewa çimaya tene tevar neba tege tümber tevar neba tege jiden çimaya teve köle yogere sungara. Jiden kawari göbeyken dedan şendülümü yorusa. Jiden kawari göbeyken Jiden kawara gyubaya randa shen sende da kyawa chimalya logu mare se yakbo yongde se ra. Lu suna ne nga zu pong zhuaya de la kyo ma bu chu ne so tungye nyaya de lu ba sigara rang lu ba sigara. Sa rang lu rang la ga che de rang logu mare me lo che yakbo yongde se ta da ra. Ya wa de shila na de do.
So then the next verse then turns to how in general one should train in sort of like the holy way. This is really referring to the kind of policy that a king should take up. And again, although this is advice for a king, we can really apply it to ourselves as well. And so the best policy then is to act or to rule according to the Dharma. So as it comes in verse 128, Dharma is the highest policy. Dharma pleases the world, and if the world is pleased, you will not be deceived here or hereafter. So in general, this is advising that one should rule according to the Dharma, specifically the kind of dharmas of higher rebirth, like those 16 dharmas and so forth that we have gone through, acting accordingly. This is the best kind of policy in terms of how one sort of rules over the world. And when you conduct oneself in that way in the world, then this is going to create more sort of happiness. As it says here, this pleases the world. The Dharma, when we act according to the Dharma in a way that is not harmful, that is helpful to others, this will be pleasing to the world. More people will like that. It will create joy and happiness in the world. And it isn't just sort of in this world in terms of in this life, but by doing so, by creating the kind of policies that lead to happiness in this life, you are also creating the sort of causes for happiness in the future. So acting in that way, acting according to the Dharma, is something that is not deceptive to ourselves or others, or not deceptive in terms of causing harm here, bringing our ruin in the here and now, or in the future. One is creating the causes for not only happiness in this life, but also good in future lives.
Ya de sa.
Jesus.
Da de che na. Da de ko wale so so de. Da de lo ji tenje la temba me ro ore. Da che da metembe lo la temba de re ma re se ra. Dinali consider Kebu si Jongwe, Traputa, Tendreton, the si Jonda Juluko, Mabuyora, or Tendre si Jonda, Choda Mitumba Jonda Sheteda, Timbachi Maris de Shedwa, Lugi Dangerous, Kebu Jongwe, Kebu Kesi Jongwe, Lugi Dangerora, or Tizung Yamba Tendela, Jide Jonda, Choda Mitumba, Traputa, Tendreton, the Jongete, Tembarig Maris de Shedwa, Tela Meba, or Tela Shoda Mitebe Sika, Tela Meba, Merataira, Yagomarese, Luta Tambu de Shedwa, or Luigi Tanjuta, Si Jonda de Tragoda, Shoda Mitebe Shone, Jawate, Rigimares, or Tishedwa, Tambu. Chimi Bene, Lunde Case, Chima Imbetone, Si Luke, Jaya Kain Batisora, they enjoy them megarius. Jigdan Trapotan Chichuda Mitebe Mamutichid, me some Maga Chizo Mega Churda. Shimi Bene, Lone de Car, they Jigdan Megajurus. Jigdan Mega Yichin did on Shendo, Carmejus. Sendela Kesikonada, Chitezu Yahweh Umara, Chizo Kawame, Mokushin get a limb to the Kawamana. And it Mega Mimamu Mega Chid Mimamu Chawachesuna. Jigdan Dele Koran Kesi Abamajore, Kawashima, Delejan, Nami Mabu Yongo Chigra. Oh, Tiende, did I send to Temejurse? That Kebulu Tenju Namba Sigora, Kebulu Tenju Namba, Sawachos Mawala Soba, or Tinder Lugi Tenju Chisatan and Digmare Sora. Shumi Penny Lug de Kaase, Tenjik make at yours. Oh, Kaimba Tenjik then make out you there. Jide Megad Jube, Jan, said that I send to Megara Jube, Lung Ebabom, send the light chiso that round the summer make you a shada. And the Jiden Shimalate and Drebu take a shell at Sawacheva, make you lay Drebu Yabanyungra. Oh, teach Lamia.
So, then the next topic kind of deals with then the unsuitability, one could say, of relying upon bad treaties. So here again, in the context of say royal rule or royal policy, there are those kind of systems or texts, one could say, that are like bad textual systems that might advocate some kind of rule that includes say harshness or sort of wrath, causing harm to others. So to rule in a way that is not according to Dharma is something that is not suitable, that is not right. So here in verse 129 it reads, "But a policy that proceeds without Dharma will not please the world. And if the world is not pleased, you will not be happy here or hereafter." So there are many different sort of texts or treaties on how to rule that do not accord with Dharma, that might advocate sort of non-dharmic, harmful methods, harsh or wrathful methods of ruling a population. And when one employs such tactics in a society, that is going to create a great deal of unhappiness. Society won't be pleased. In this life, one is not going to experience good results in terms of what happens within the world. And many people being unhappy through the harm that is caused, it's not going to lead to good results here and now, nor is it going to lead to good results in the future. So this is something that will not lead to happiness either for society or yourself here or in the hereafter. So there are those kinds of sort of royal or treaties that deal with politics, how to rule, and some advocate for those kinds of tactics that are non-dharmic, that are harmful, that are policies that are not creating good either in the now or hereafter, and therefore those are to be disparaged or criticized, one could say.
Oh, yeah. The Lugi Tenju, Si Joda Nembalia, Nembachene Jamba, the Trabuto, the Retin, Jitenda Mitumbachene, Chimaibachene, Sika, the Members, Meratangura, the Retin Yawamaris, the Chigua, Sologa Sumjutigra. Oh, the Carsondosana. To me, Rigba, Yanda Lam Sigua, to me, Rigba, Yanda Lamsi. Giving the Trupchi to maybe as a term about Sitera. si kyang kari na chi zo le ya kon tyon da den ba pen do yo ba chi che go ya ra de ti me se de ki bin de de tu chi tu me be se chi zo kari de ge na ti tang da tu chi tu me be ne lo nge ba ta bu tho ne ta ro ta te sai ne do me top ta da chi me ba da ma bu she yo ra o tu si ga ra o te me je ba nge de lam se ki bin de chi zo gen de be ta de ma tu ba she ne 작보다 텐데 돈을 내가 챙겨주지 나서라 기빈데 두치도 매배 롱에 배치수 슈퍼데 네 년들 내제바 코너세베 소소 챈들에 지도 매대와 저와 치마랑 년도에 교수과 코너를 마도 텔레하고 가요 말으시거라 되메 르방에도 람 라셰로레 메세바 라다 셴니가 견치거라 전에 가르쳐라. 라다 셴니가 세바 마세 라셰 르바 홀라 라다 셴니가 로그요라. 지테 신델레 코치소다 템바 마세도 치소 로그요라. 겨와치마 소소 레가 지야데 겨와치마 소소 로그요라. 소소 동해 용거라. 체델라 미키 치마 동해 용거 tinde셔요. 코나르세베 셴로와 홀렘바 겐조 미세바 케바세 그래서 셴로로리 메세바 셴 고고타고 로비어라 셴로한테 쪼치거라 제마한테는 대부 메세바 채틀을 치소 메테와라 메테와 제마 대부 냠바양 곳에 시럽 차와 남기 내세 시럽 차와 남기네 대 시장에 냠바전에 장에 시럽 차와 로스르에시오라 가르쳐도스나 시럽 채와 남제에서 대다리 기비던 rebirths 시럽 채와 남기니 시다리 기비던 rebirths 기볼라네 내가 진짜로 가시죠 되네 되게 된다시 짜야 되게 미치서 삼아담 저 리버에서 와라 고고 단계에서 차로 두부치에서 어디 바빵네네 쳐다 틈배 시장으로 맞아 개불로기 땡줄래 셔바나시 작보다 어텐데 로 제스장기와 말해서도 야 텐데스
So then turning to verse 130, again, those kinds of texts or treaties that advocate for some kind of policy that is against the Dharma, those deserve to be sort of censured or criticized, we could say, and so or scorned. So here in verse 130 it reads, "A useless political theory is one that intends to deceive others. It is harsh and a path to bad rebirths. How could the unwise make such a theory useful?" So here, when we're talking about a kind of a theory or a policy that is sort of not useful or not meaningful, whether we are talking about the kind of policy that is, say, harsh or that is harmful in some ways. There are texts that advocate for certain kinds of policies that only create suffering in society in the present. So whether it is with certain measures that are harsh or acting in ways that don't accord with the Dharma, one will create suffering in the present, and as well as creating the causes of future suffering. This is a kind of policy that is deceptive in terms of the present. Like, it is not something that is not working for their benefit now. And when we have such a policy that deceives society, not only are they not happy now, but it is creating the causes for bad in the future as well. So here, when it comes to this kind of a policy, these sorts of bad treatises, causes, they basically are only taking us onto paths that will lead to bad things. It is sort of a policy that deceives, like willingly deceives others in the present. And not only that, those that are of sort of corrupt wisdom, how could such a policy of theirs be meaningful as it is something that is solely harmful to others? So here, when we think about the ways in which these kinds of policies, not only are they harmful in the temporary, they're deceptive in terms of not actually bringing happiness, but bringing harm. And so too, for the future, they are creating the causes of future suffering as well, and thereby are sort of deceptive in the future as well.
Oh yeah. 더 담다디 지버에도 좀 소지돼 다 텔라 매바스 시긴겐바 로아 계시 종류의 잡보다 텐데토네 지조 삼로도 메템바체네 된다 시장게도 좀 만들버레스 티셰고라 그 지조 세대 그 가서라 지단코 잠불렌티 코란 잠불렌티를 내겐게 심제 상물을 와와예시고라 나라도 딱 세고라 가면시 40페이지 조심해도 잠시는 잠불이 간 거야 지야 표기도 와 대표에 대가려서 소소 왕자 요새가 왕에 차요래 잠불이 님바다와다 진내지대 참 강가로 온 거요 그래서라 강가로 와서 자꾸 앞에는 편에 두고 와라 어디인데 디나시 시조데 디나 땡게 밑에서 와래 시고라 대선자 대줘야 최바다 대표에다가 편에 두고 가서 소소 왕자 지와래 시고라 집에 잘라지나 코페 집 나라주네 그래서 제가 흉기 잘라이네 가요 말에 저랑 바구네 짜고 말해서 또 알아요. 저랑 바구네 짜고 말에 흉기를 뒤때시서 잘라만 배치지 동시에시거라. 오늘 전에 집에 들레디고 쳐요라. 정말 와게 미치기 와게 잘라 고모치고이나 지소 집에 잘라 고모치고이나 미 장단냐 베티고베 되고 주세요라. 자, 거기 강가로 와기와라. 강가로 와 손자는 강가 그 뒤지 속에 들어달야 시장구로 마도지. 강가리야 칼라사투 중에 던르다 시저 샤샤 소소 삼로야 매주 깨지시 매주 아니 그 대화서 게 말아. 사야데 세 통에 통도는 던르다 지고리더라. 가를람나 팅고데 한드로샤 마도 소소 깨게 치에메도 린담메도 아미. 어떤데 장주와 말을 송거라던다. 파르루와 롤렘바 던도 제대로 롱된 인세 로아 롱엠바 지조 jon다데 지조기 삼루다 튠바 로아 디기 용해 삼루다 튠바지 마제네 로 장바이나 세 장바이나 디 롱엠바데서 와라 자꾸 토네다 지금 미간가 라와메바 소야다 딘데토네 롱엠바 데 제수다 개별로네 파르루와 롤 밀는 거고 당겨 와라 지조로 원기요래 지조로 원자요래 원자가게 매버스 메카시지 원자 생기요라 건조가리 제제래서라 내매 개별 롤레 또가리 지래서라 노티소다 파르로와 롤렘바 바시 돼서라 파르로와 롤렘바 전도 지달롱된 인세 전도로와 기비 전도 로단 덴바인데 말해서라 기분도 가야지도 지소 그거 가야다 지소 대화 용해다 지소를 되게 용해 된다고 거래서라 디매나 아니 로게 받더니 좋아 되되되도 가서 지더라 롱대인데 로단 덴바 말해서라 걔는 처럼 동자도 당이 권을 려버 주세 시장 장사게 메마로 고고다 로하네 소소에 르브레 소소 간데 르브레스는 단다 왕자라 지시베르데 최대 템바시나 코틴 데부 나미데 겨와지마들 미게로 어디선자 데네 치레 동자도 당이 권을 르버리 요르스 야 되실라나
So here, this continues then into the next verse, 131, where it reads, since that deception will just deceive oneself for many thousands of rebirths, how could one intent on deceiving others be a true statesman at all? So here, those kinds of bad words, or like those bad sorts of policies that have a kind of way of being harsh, or that don't sort of acknowledge the kind of authority or sort of natural rights, we could say, of the people. So when we think about this, like for example, when we make the mandala offering of this ground anointed with incense and so forth, we are imagining offering the entire universe, the sun, the moon, and all of that, because we all have some sort of like stake in this world. We all have a little bit of authority over that. And so thereby we have the sort of power to be able to make that offering. We are part owners, we could say, or we have a kind of yeah, an authority or a right to that. And so here, if you have a kind of policy that does not acknowledge the sort of basic rights of people, or even if we are not say statesmen or leading a society, if we think of property that is common to others and sort of take that for granted, like if we think, oh, I'm only taking $1, like, oh, I'm only taking from the government or something. If we take even $1 that really belongs to all of these other people, think about the kind of negativity that we are getting from having taken from all of those things that are common property of others. So here we should be very cautious with respect to using something that belongs to others for our own purpose. But as it says here, in terms of the way that if we have an idea that using such methods as being harsh or being harmful to others as a way of doing political policy, this is something that will be deceptive, as in the short term, it is going to be harmful. And also, as it says here, it will deceive oneself for many thousands of rebirths, as in making the kinds of like creating the causes for those negative ripening results in the future. So here, rather than sort of thinking about ruling in a way that is solely beneficial to oneself, or trying to get as much as one can for oneself, not only are you deceiving yourself in terms of this birth, but how could one intend on deceiving others? As in, you are creating the causes for their suffering in the short term, as well as something that is going to be bad in the future. How could that kind of person be a true statesman? So here, if we are really to be a ruler who rules in accordance with the Dharma, we should do so in a way that is creating the causes for happiness for society in the present as well as in the future. And really understanding that our power and authority are linked with others, and not misusing that in any kind of a way.
Oh yeah. 다들다 가서 최지로 개발도 봐봐서 이 쇼로가 숨지송이 들어 최지로 개발도 봐봐시거라. 최단 템베 시장에 돼 내 개발도 봐봐레스 되시거라. 최단 템베서도 샹라 차와 매바 펜바트바 미라와 샤에 telesi거라. 최단 템베서도 샹달 고에게 요마레. 지속의 삼주다 템바 센델레 끼바 치마레 되어 진짜 영향을 주시거라. 먼저 되나를 연구해봐. 준준나를 연구해봐. 탐제 남과 조신도 론주 제바 매바 쇼셔라. 론주 사두네멜 서버티 제바 매바 지조나를 구구여라. 개부시 장들을 지속구여라. 벤조를 강에 매서래. 탐제 남과 조도 론주 제바. 저바 매제 체매바라 와도니 쥐버셔서. 저바 매바 마우두다 진짜 매바. 지질을 너바 쟁게 매바. 왕수전에 전에 당의 왕유 당의 매나. 저는 오늘 라운드를 시고라. 저바 매제 체매바 라운드는 쥐버셔서. 라운드에 되더래. 모두 연애 라운요 말에. 지기질 너바지. 지기질 차와 쟁게지요나. 강에 송게지요나. 라운요 말에. 가르쳐용서 다 가르치고 나 삼거라. 오늘 전에 라운드 구이나 어디 구이하래. 와. 탐제 남과 조절론저 제발 매버서 세고 내면을 쏘고 참말 강에 맹게 Saba meche chikje mawdu mugi saba tinte mege. Ti mene shidi yung mara, samba kibu yung mara. Chawa jenge meba, susul neba jenge meba. Rawa jene pendro chi yuj kora. Saba meche se meba, rawa tene ngone rawa re, rawa to ne chobar shose. O tina shi, chodan tumba sido yang shenda koya ke yung mara. Chizo nala chawa meba dan pemba tuwe chikchila. Nyane shosho dan chikchila pa. Tuzu tanga tinte meba, ko mi roa mi suza, tanda da mendra ashike, rawa shi kuyo da. Tanda ina saya di raja chuna ni rawa wa yo mara mi kaan chiti da kawa ta na ta rode kura. Mazu tinte meba shi kuyo da. Mi soso ki samlo ti ya, ngon chu ya. Samlo shirab da namju da kare da ya, tanda she tuwe, sam tuwe, shirab, she tuwe, tinte shi kuyo da. Tina ina ngone rawa ri shikira. Timado she na rawa maro ti chawa chinge yorwa kumje te roma samne samhabu she ra she na che te goda o tisu ta chodan tumbase o chodan tumbe lulia ti yakure se sungiwara tala neba chena se choge si chambe kapsu samsale timge chinge to zola ko te da tumbage so che da tinde yo maro mado ko te da tumbage cheba to se kange soya da chi tinde che chog mare se tinde ko timje te yongura te te che ko re se te ko chamba nyeje je ko ba yago ji chaya to da miti tande keran te yo mare te je ta yago ji che chaya to da le ko so ko yo da ko namsa se tu che shana ne ka te si yo mara miti yago chaya tande ne yar do e tabshi che wara Tala neba jena ya, kyonam tangde yonde, tense. Kola neba jena ya, koi kyonde paya da, koi yonde de yangja, tindre maje che mi yakbo cho yonge tapshi che gore esigora. Tene kyoje rangpen topse, kirangla ne rangpen do, ko soso sambe tonde, ko gyurchu tane, negab timchi che ne, te gyurchu da, ko yar doye, kyonde maje yar doye samlo tane, tanda ko samlo sambo tane kola tiche na, ko negab tose kangere chunga yena ya ko pusu ko gyurju tanya chide tene ki yagare si wara. Tene kyoje rangpen topse rangpen tose topgire choda tumbe laga chara. Ko gyurju tanya yagar tanya topsi chigi wara. Kira kyoje tiche ta maungpa tende machi ti dire che wara sere. Trawa yane meka di gyurse. Trawa yane meka di gyurse. Trawa meka wa gyugurede, trawa sinemuta timge chingede, meka gyugurede, di soso li kyunge yo ma resi wara. Kurang kyunge jeba di timda timba chi koti yungure, so jeba la soba tinde chiyate mehra. Ma chidang tim tos tante yora. Ti kiranta di nyeba tiri maungba tinde machi yagu che wara se, tundali resi wara. Kede trala nuba chena, trasido wadi timge chigisiwa, nuba chena kyunam tante, Yonde tenje se kira kyonde mashi ase, maungpa yonde dinde che ure da ase, ane tene, rawa, kyoje cheba batoks, kyo chebe shendun dube, trala yana ta dwa. Trawa dile ko negab ko maga chede, tim chede ko yungurwa, kabo me chichi, kalete yungurwa. Yine ya, yine ko rangla pemba, rangla ya, Kana mato a medo se timda tanya de sosol tikba ke yo mare shara. Kana mato sosol tikba yo mare. Te tim koran yeshe de zambuli timda timba che war mato. Te mena kanjuma ju she che ne chige che saya tu kanga chigra timsan mena kanjuma ju chigra. Te sosol ke yo mare tikba yo mare sigora. Ko yawo je juju te tondalia ne ga sawa mebe chi karso. So chebala soba tinde mebe tim tane. Ti rali ya kwenke ki oma, tikba yoma res. Nika sara. Diswa. O tichi labna, di sara. Diswa. Tala neba jena ya se tim tane sora. Kyonam tangde yonden tembe shidu chigiwa rese. Tine cheje rangpen topse, trawo yane megar yose, kirang pemba topgi rese, yaku cheba rese. Trawa tozi nega megaba kyuna kirang li ya, tikba ke yo ma rese ya chore. Ko samlu sambu to ne chigi wara. Ya o tichi labna.
So then next we turn to this section on the sort of superiority or how distinct dharmic rule is. So really when it comes to the kind of policy for ruling a people, we should think about sort of giving rights to people, trying to have a society that is based upon trying to not harm others and do benefit as much as possible. So when we think about the kind of situation of having sort of freedom, we could say, or having a society that works well for all, this is really as it is described in a verse from the dedication of Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, where he describes like all sentient beings sort of like this, having like a sky treasury, having all of their material needs met as in terms of like food and clothing and shelter and so forth, and not being subject to a violent subjugation, having a kind of situation in which they live without fear, having that sort of state of freedom. And so here, when we think about what it means to have sort of freedom or to have rights, if we are in a situation where we have fear, like if we were to act in a certain way, we think that we might have violence inflicted upon us and so forth. That's really not a good sort of society that is functioning in accordance with the Dharma. And so when we think about what is necessary to have a good functioning society that accords with Dharma and what it means to have people that are free, having their kind of material needs met in terms of food and clothing and shelter, and acting in ways which are not harmful to one another, and where people are not sort of facing the fear of violence or being subjugated in some kind of a way. And so when we think about sort of freedom for humans, or what it means to have rights, as opposed to say like something like an animal. I mean, an animal, if they are able to get enough to eat and drink, then we would say that they're sort of free. But for humans, to have the freedom of thought and freedom of expression and so forth, where they're not living in a society where they say are cowering in fear of something. This is really that is. What we might define as like a good society or one that accords with Dharma. Now here in this next verse, and I'm just going to read this, but I think the way that Geshe-la is giving commentary to it, we might need to switch it slightly. So it says, if you wish to make your foes unhappy, do away with your faults and enhance your good qualities. That way, you will gain great benefit, and your enemies will also be displeased. Now, here, when it comes to a functioning society, there are going to be times where we have those that say break the laws, that transgress the kind of ways that we are supposed to act. And as to have that kind of functioning society, we need to inflict some kind of punishment to try to correct the behavior of those who are acting in ways that are negative. So here, this first line where it says, if you wish to make your foes unhappy, we could also think about this, if you wish to inflict a punishment. If someone has done something that is a transgression, we should try to do things for them that do away with their faults and try to develop their good qualities. So when we are, say, inflicting a punishment, it shouldn't be just like sort of inflicting violence. And of course, punishing someone like by taking their life is absolutely unacceptable. But in terms of trying to correct what they have done wrong, we should try to do it in a way that it isn't just punishment, but is trying to get rid of that fault and enhance their good qualities. Because this is what is going to be beneficial. Even if, say, by implementing the laws or sort of the punishment to this person, temporarily they might be unhappy. In the long term, this is going to be of greater benefit. So here we can read it the way that it is sort of literally of if you wish wish to make your foes unhappy, do away with your faults and enhance your good qualities. That way, you will gain benefit and your enemies will also be displeased. But we can also think about this in the context of implementing justice or like putting down the rule of the law. If you wish to inflict a punishment, we should do so in a way that enhances the good qualities of that person that is being punished and is trying to do away with their faults. Even if in the short term they might be sort of unhappy, we're looking for a greater benefit in the long term.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that did it. Because 이번 군대 주 개발자를 나봐서 될 전쟁에 좀 가셔가는 시기도 군대 주 개발자를 나봐서 저 가르도서는 도와실을 나봐서 친구도 근데 템버마와서 나봐서라 로 개화표에 줄을 나봐서 전쟁 숨들 제시도 다 담보 단도대 가르시도서는 군대 주 개발자를 나봐나 두에 응어보실을 나봐서 되시도 두에 응어보실을 나봐서 담보들아 두에 먹으실라 라바스 제가래서는 신다 냠바르 마와다 팬다 된직 줘바데 대다 남게 직대다 최자도 아니도 저세더라 솔가 숨주소 숨들에도 어디 가르쳐도서는 짐발라서바 짐베 도와서 짐발라서바 짐베 도와 진다 냠바르 마와다 짐바가주 쉬운 거봐 최기 침바 민지베 침바 성생기 침발라 소바시고라 침바 침베거나 콜메르 내가 초회 강에서 지어베네 초회 도내 로바치에치라 성생기 최기 침바 콜 삼로 땅당을 지 메기 버틴데다 삼로 땅당을 납치해야더라 최다 템베 납치해야요라 삼로 가데 땅거를 가르쳐 오래 간디시 오래세 최다 템베 납치하고라 신다하세 냠바로 마와다스 마르카스 선생이 좀 쳐지시바 민직배 침바스도 콜라 강에는 좀 메세 가려요나야 텔레 로바체네 로바체고 거라 지조리야 주 팬도시에 된다려 침바세데 지나 마모도도 선생이 침바 쳐지시바 민직배 침바스 냠바로 마와다스 저는 건도 당에래도 최기 깨져 고라기 삼로다 틈바 내가 강가시에네 그 삼로다다 추트마 치료요라 왕보다 참바지게 콜로다 틈바에 냠바르 마와세 뭐도 당연히 땀 냠바르 마와세 지시거라 고셈 고야던다 고란 삼로 컨텐도다 대단 틈바 그 삼로를 팬도 예배 최시고요라 냠바르 마와다스 저네 진다 냠바르 마와다 그러니까 내다 신다 냠바르 마와다 팬다 된지죄 받아서 샬라 팬도야 돼 된지죄 받아 대단 남진지 대단 쇠전도 아니던 저서 다른 데 가르치도서나 진보 숨라 속에 진보 권한에 콜리아츠 라는 자와제고요라 지다 고쳐대 코란 데바 유나 최시하고를 마도 데바 매네 오이체는 파 최시네 근데 제체 요 말아 수 코란 데바 연계지 누나네 때도 투버치 시하고를 마도 등사야 가라도 최시하데 바로 저 자래 잡에 그 삼루레스도 다 보다가 망보를 짓고 그래서 망보 지저가 좀 망을 건데 또 지주라고 제지고 망보세데 갑자기 자야를 삼루에는 망보다 숙치주다고라 철을 된데 따야게 말아 소소소 삼루다 투바 가래 펜브에나 티잠소 나야 저래 마도 소소나시 창모테다 투바 제고야지 요 말아 미에라와라 미 삼루면다요래 제가 면다요래 닝도 면다요라 소소소 가르카고 있는 티치하는 데를 마도 티장장 제고에 신다가 매부서 신 텔렘다테라 전들레 두가수로 차야냐가 요라티 신다가 매부서는 같이 붙대고 세시 가요래 대토에 요 말아 어디인데 가서라 짐바 숨라 속에 코르도 왔다서 어디에 가서 저와 제단데 콜 팬도 그쳐다 삼을단에 지쳐고라 봐도 선생이 짐바 최지 짐바 민지배 짐바 콜 저와 지쳐고라 저와는 팬도 전에 콜 앞에도 더더래 봐도 뒤수 저와요 저와는 맞을 백 대신에 용거 말아 밀은 저와 지고라 lapcho sangpo de pa she ku yo na melo dewa che ku yo ra. Dewa che ku de yo ne, jimba sumla soba tinte ko ne tsu dewa che ku de se ku ra. Jimba sumla soba jimba kor dowa da. Kor do tuwa tsu soso de nyamdo dodi dewa yo gere so ku yo ra tamo. Ti so ra. Ta, ane ngondo ngele zambe tam nyambar mawa se do. Chinta nyambar mawa ta se. Ngondo lada mi koban topchi ta ngele tarwa topchi korang lo dang chamba chigi tam nyambar mawa ro meze ke yakbu che ke tanda la soso ke shen kiba chen meze ke dang lapche mambu kya yo ra pe chena chuna lya tende korang semda tiba lapche kya ku yo ra ngondo ngele le chamba tam nyambar mawa ta ten che ba shen la pendo nyamsu ten che ba se de shen liya penpe tuen nyamso lian shu pa, rwa. Tuen shu pa de, penye ni nyamso lian tu shu pa, pa she de nyamba ruma ka tam she ne, tin na shi ko che chu ku re se go ra, che chu ku re, nyamso lian shu ku ra. Tuen shu pa de, tuen shu pa de se, so so ke, shu shen gen de ke, ko tan tu pa che, so so ke te chi ko go ra. So so te chi ma che, mele te chi ku re se na, tene nge maa tumchi yu ba nga zi. Che shenge digi chik, che shambu shira she yu ra. Korang di chigi me re. Ane chigi kechi te loma chigi. Ane kerang di chigi me duwa tsama. Nga zo tende chigi duwa se re. Da nge sheba kanga chigi, nge sheba kanga ma che seba chawar ko ti. Tende memba chi ko ra. Tsama da che tu ma de kanyong yo chingi re chi ko ra so so. Chapata chawada chi che ma ra. Ti me ana ane ti ma di rwa, che za ti le so so ge ti che bach kwa re si bara. Shen le she de so so ge ka yo che tup che, mi le che chu e ti le tup si che wo re si bara. Ya. Shen la kwe bata rangi ki nyam su lemba chi kwa re tu bara. Tan de le ti si do, ma tu de kar su re. Shindang se de swa, nyambar ma wa de rwa. Pendang se, tenji chue ba te, deda nam ne ore. Tante, tinte me to tante ra. Diswa, shida nyambar ma wada penda, tenji chue ba te se, tene, deda nam jen jikden da, chue je to ya, te, jikden su, ruru se, randa drawa yo ba se kwa de se. Ane chue ge cho ne su drawa yo ba, koran deba yo ne, drawa yo ba se kwa de se nga ra. Ya, what is your lakshana?
So then we turn to training in the special particular kinds of causes of higher rebirths or higher status. And so these are in three categories. The first being the four means of assembling disciples, and then speaking truthfully and so forth. And then training in the particular cause of increasing virtue. So beginning with the four means of assembling disciples, that then comes in verse 33. It reads, be generous, speak gently, be beneficent, act with the same intention as you expect from others. Through these ways of acting, bring together the world and also sustain the Dharma. So here, when it comes to the sort of means by which we gather disciples or help others to become involved in a virtuous path. This begins with being generous. So we can be generous in different ways. Here in the commentary, it talks about three types of generosity, but that could be four or more. But in terms of when we are trying to create connections that are beneficial to help others be able to enter into the path, we can create these connections through, say, being materially generous. If someone has some kind of material need that we are able to meet, we can be generous with physical, substantial possessions. And then there is being generous in the sense of giving advice to others when they are going through difficulty, how they go about fixing their mind or working with their mind. Or we can give others freedom from fear, help them and benefit them when they are in a situation of need. We can also give love and so forth. So here, in general, we begin by drawing others to us through generosity, any of those types of generosity, and then speaking gently, or really speaking in a way that it accords with the faculties of the person that you are speaking to. So here in general, this is where it says speak gently. This is kind of giving advice to others about how they achieve paths of high status, how they go about through the sort of things that we should adopt and abandon, how they can ensure having a good rebirth as a human or god, and so forth. Now here, so speaking in a way that is sort of going to lead them on a particular path and encouraging them then to act in that way. And then, as it says here, acting ourselves with the same intention. Now, here we need to think about sort of our ways of thinking, right? All sentient beings have their own sort of dispositions and what they are drawn to, their various levels of faculties and preferences and so forth. And often there are those in this world who think that, well, everybody needs to think just like me, right? We're sort of, there are those who go out in the world and are trying to impose their view upon others. But of course, we all have freedom. We all have our own kind of needs. And it isn't as though in the case of the Dharma, we are trying to bring everyone to our view so that like there are more people who think like us, or we are sort of going to gain numbers, like thinking in this way of everyone should be like me, but rather the idea is to be of benefit to the other, right? So this kind of spreading of the Dharma is with the intention of being beneficial to the other party, not out of a motivation of like wanting to get more people on our side or be of our tradition. And so to create a connection with others that is beneficial, we begin with generosity, whether that's material generosity or giving advice or protection from fear and so forth. And then we give advice that is beneficial to another. How do we go about sort of how do they go about creating the causes for a good rebirth and avoiding a negative rebirth and so forth. And then there's sort of giving them advice that then goes into how they should act. And so when it comes to giving that kind of advice and encouraging others to act in that way, so here the be beneficent is really getting at sort of trying to engage others in practice that is beneficial for them. And when we are encouraging others to practice in a particular way, we ourselves should be practicing like that, right? So there are stories about this in the past of like particular teachers who would be saying one thing to their students, but not acting in that same way. And their students feel like, well, why are you telling us to act like this, but you yourself are not acting like that? And the teacher responded with, well, do what I say, not what I do. And so here it's important that we, if we're trying to encourage others to a particular virtuous way of acting, that we ourselves act accordingly. So here, the final of these in that an act with the same intention as you expect from others. Through these ways of acting, bring together the world and also sustain the Dharma. This is how we gather disciples or really benefit other sentient beings through the way that we create these positive connections with them.
Oh yeah, that is so. That did that kasara. Oh, niba tira. Oh, Sambola. That did that kasara. Temba maoso shila laba setira. Temba maoso shila laba seta. Me. Tila batil so temba shita tambutire. Temba da tonga da. Nyawari shiwa da shirap. Sambola laba setire. shila labanana tambu kara temba keze temba trambo temba koran ko yara tonga dans de shen chimba tonga le so tin de sura nyore shiwa ton shiwa le ne de shiwa shende se ate ro shiwa ne shira sangbo la laba she ta tenjen shi she to a temba la so ba shila laba tina ne ta tambo temba la laba tirita keze temba trambo temba ran she ate laba tire odi karsido sene Kebu dala chitabur o sholokani sumji sopshidira. Kebu dala chitabur kebu dala chitaburu se. Tempa bashi ti labala kebu tu labkure se ora. Tempa bashi mawala labkure. Kezi kyauchin shen gogo tang tende che mera. Tempa bashi mawala labar chakure se ora. Kebu dala chitaburu tenchik yichi tenki basta temba chebudu pe kechebudu esora ti mekanga yichi chigre esora temba ma shabja samda gogo ta kechu shetende sene ni yichi chigmare yichi ma chene ko shabadel sita tona chigmarwa o tende yo mar karsigne meshes chagra cheta ke cheshute tagbare sikje temba she ko esora ngarandu kechen damda she parul ta she shagra mel gogo ta Mune yimai samlama tachi tachi she. Tindesulu chinishe kiwa marta tanda. Mune tanda kechi timbashe wan mi ichi chigu marwa. Kebu tala chitaburu tenchi. Tawa timbachi bude. Kechen bude stikarasni ichi. Chisogi mimagi ichi chigresu. Timarazu kanga tagarwa. Kebu chibu mara lega chingi kare na ko kechi timba tambu shena. Lega ngo chingi tili ichi chigira. Temba machineni ichi ching marwa. Ti kasi dosana. Temba bashi mawala beku re se. Kebuge. Kebu dala ya kyun shenda yong sigre se gora. Chita kyun shenda samja chita dimandi yong sigra. Kebu dala nyeba shembambu. Ye jang se roa. Temba mawa chikbu de yo na. Ane megi ichi chigre se. Ti kesimbu re se gora. Temba mawa chikbu de Yena mi samage yichi chigre kelang rese. Temba mawa de mena yichi chigma rese, mi yichi chigma rese gora. Tinde. Temba bashin bangala bebar shaku rese. Kebu dala chitabu tenchi ise. Kares na ti yichi tembu ketu rese. Yichi kena rangi lega chebala mi yichi chigra chashagra. Tishin tela chumanese. 다 준 거고 남의 따지요 말. 준 남의 세죠 말해서 ora. 제가서 이미 제벌 세배죠. 아니 이시 매버 세배 초도 줘봐대 준들에 세라. 다 그렇게 좀 차셔야 말다. 다 시셔라 버려. 대시게 전부를 담보 템바 마디시도. 템바 바시 마올라 배고리 개볼이야. 라니 바시에 마보 요세그데 temba mawa de chibu yo na ane megi yichi chigre sore tela lab ku gre sore wa yichi tene chendi namya tangi wa mare sora chen tamba ene ane yi me cheba chagre chasha chig mare sora chen mawa ne yi cheba de chibe yi me cheba de chibe chodo juba tere te sonza tu kadu yena keche tambu temba sebo mil sebo ngogo mata ka sebo chi shegore te keshin bode shegdo ya te chilan temba mawa te ra tanda tugna ne ya ka shina ne ya
So then next is training in the four, speaking truthfully and so forth. And these will be individually explained beginning with verse 34. So the first of these is training in being truthful and being honest. And then there is training in generosity, training in being pacified, peaceful, and training in wisdom. And so here, as it says in verse 134, a single truth uttered by kings makes makes their subjects have firm trust in them. Likewise, one falsehood on their part is the best way to lose that trust. And so here it is extremely important to always be truthful, to speak honestly, to speak clearly and candidly, and really to only speak truthful words. That is, words that are not intended to deceive in any way. So here, when one speaks truthfully and does so on a regular basis, then others can trust in what you say. If we don't have trust, if someone has lied, if they have been deceitful in the past, then we're not going to believe them. We're not going to have faith in what they say or what they do. And so here, his advice to the king is to always be truthful. Something we should never lie. Lying, as it says here, is the best way to lose that trust. So even if one may have other faults, if one is honest, then we can have trust in that person. And this is particularly advice for the king, but it isn't just for a king, but rather this is for us as well, right? Even if we might have many other faults, by just having truthfulness, by being honest, by speaking truthfully and honestly, we will have trust from others, and others in turn will trust in the work that we do. The supreme way to lose trust among others is to lie. And so here again, as is described in this verse, when a king, even though they may have many other faults, they may have many other flaws, by just speaking truthfully, then other sentient beings can have trust in them. There's someone that we can have trust in, even if we understand that they may have other flaws. But that kind of truthfulness and honesty, speaking candidly, clearly, truthfully, honestly, is the best kind of policy for others to have trust in them and what they do. Likewise, one falsehood on their part is the best way to lose that trust. When we even speak falsely in one occasion, this is the best way to lose trust from others.
Oh yeah, you saw. That don't love us at it. Chimba don't love us it. She and the chimba don't love us at it. Oh, Gavale so Niba mother, Niba order Niba. Chimba don't love us ora. That chidar cable, never tas. Chinsechi gi peba tarse. Chidar gable ya chida coach Miss Samaltos no do that in the young cigarra. In the coach mambo young cigarette cigarra. Yena, that chimba de yabutan to Yena. Just and that should have member of Chadu Resora. Music Abuchon and the coaches the Oko Tongue Chambores and Samal Pendo Yabuchina. Yako just and that the Chun Tos to Yanako. Should I say, Mege, Menguba Chag Resora. Or Chidari Cable and Yeba Mambo, you can say, Don't be Chimba. Chesel. Don't be Chimbuche, Chimbuche, Sabuchene. Was said the wish about down to Inasigora. Chidari Cable, Yebada, Chinsechi, Pebadar. Chimbachi pay Tachimbupa. Was said the wish about Chitana. Junction that the part Menguba to the child, Pedro gets to the Chavio, this one. Maybe to the Menguba Chavio, Tatanda, Pebatar. Teaching Jumba Tedaki, Yanda Tamje, Dogba Tamje, Yanda Dogba Tamje Jumse. Jumba should have sent Sigora. Sana Chambo Yenda ko Shanda Kaya, Robert Chimbetum Gachina, and a co Yanda Shanda Kanga Yenda Tipa, Jumba Chinget of Chidresura. Teaching Jumba Tedaki, Yanda Dogba Tamje Jumse. Tuda, Gabutil Sigora Tatunda. Gabul never Mambuchina, yours. Ongbu Chambo Yovena. Chisol Pendo Chico Sakanga, Copendo Chetumbichi Yovena Sigora. Next in Bajic, Sibashita Sabuchen, down to which Yovena. And they take a church and that Mengubachi, she don't go send me a chunking church and you Neman doing the Sabuke, Chentunguma Resura. Pesha and Pevana, she is a paper. Then she has some night Chimbushida, you know, Pendo Checo, Chetuya, you know, much of it, Yenasura. On the Tigga, you then Tom J. Jones, Javoli, you then Shenda, you know, all that some Chimbushida, Jabu Gidra, Shenda Pendo Chetuya, Kugabuna, Chimara, Kaga Chimara said, Kosheta Shembang, some maybe, Junkie Suda, Chadu. Oh, the and then dog what time you dash and you not as well. Journey, some that shit that she would take for, and you dash and that to the far. We said to make a child this order. Sena, this one that send upon a Kaduina, they're watching Bishan Bank, Chimbala Chunko, they say. That's Chimbala Mambo Yangudua or Tamati. Yeah, I think this.
Kendi drosa Lua meden denmate.
God said that.
Gangma di drosa
Ah,
Lua me va tempa demate se jo di dominse de.
you are
Dick-
Mela.
Solo sunju so hit so mate.
Oh.
Sumchusonga di kirang dishinang sasoe.
Sunju so mate dreshe drama so.
Some song.
Oh,
So look at some song at the back.
la re.
All some song now.
Sunju so mate
Some so she.
demate se de.
Some so do you. Some don't much. Low made the time at all over the Temba Mountain, touch and there. Oh, you can. 2000 Roma.
Kebo
Yeah, all the 20 so them to them. Tambula Temba Tambula Temba Mountain, so don't want to do so.
Lare.
That's Shiva did way. Kagito, some song at the drama said.
sunju so mate.
Ya samgido.
Some song at the Siwada.
No.
Oh, yeah, I need to conduct so.
Di demba mawa la yang re.
Oh, don't watch it. Don't quarter and said, all I ordered. Yeah. Oh, then it did it. Loa Mende, Temate, I did today. Temba Mawa said the vacation, but they said, you better. Temba Mawa the vacation, but they said, me Temba Mana Lugmare. Since any men go out and you are a Lugura. The Loa Mende Tembates, Loa Meva, the Temba Mawa, me go out and you are Mara, Lugomare, when they cut in the Shigura. And then Loa Mende. Tembe Sigma on it, Temba Mare, Shara, did this one. And it is similar, because Sembe Jura, turned the means of order. Sembe Samlutani, Sembe turned the Metimba, Tindezi Lago Madro, some Sembe Nalia Gogota, Samlukora in Ayasigora. Sembe Jura turned down one of the members of Shenda to Silamna some Jura in Asigora. Sembe Joa turned the means city, Sembe Joa de turned to Tanda Rakana Termana call 2 member Maritia to be changed Gogota to the Rugura. Turned the means Sembe turned on Mitimba, Jura turned to 2 member Maritia to the Resera, Misera. Shall I check to Pemba? Maybe she may shall I check to Pemba? Temba Mao said, shall touch it to Pemba, Tembeting Mao, Madame Gometa till Sora. Touch the Pendo to get the Tembangoneti, Sabuch and shared Sora. Shall I check to Temba? Temba Mao Yella said. Pembe send the shall I check to Pemba dance, she touch to Pembe some seven Temba is. They will go down Madira. Mivention, she may say. Shall Pendo Mabazam go to Tambana, Temba Mamma, Timma, Esivara. Oh, this one. Oh, this Julia, this one.
So here, sorry about that, but just we had gone ahead to generosity, but we missed this one verse. And again, this is getting at the importance of speaking truthfully, and I think this is because they are emphasizing how important honesty and truthfulness is. So here in 135, it says, "To speak the truth is to speak in a manner that is not deceptive, and it is not what is in fact distorted by an intention." So when one speaks truthfully, there's no intention of deceiving others. There's no sort of ulterior motive. One doesn't have to question the intention of what is being said because it's not being said for the purpose of deceiving someone. So we don't have to be sort of like suspicious of it being distorted by some kind of intention. A statement is true by being of benefit to others. The other kind of statement is false since it is not beneficial. So speaking truthfully, speaking in accordance with the way that things are, is solely to be of benefit to others. So again, this is emphasizing the importance of speaking truthfully, speaking in a way that isn't deceptive or trying to lead others astray. And in doing so, one is speaking in a way that is solely beneficial to others. So then turning next to verse 36, which is dealing with generosity. It says here, "A single shining act of generosity hides the flaws of a king. Likewise, an instance of greed will contradict all of his good qualities." So here, when it comes to a king that might even have many various kinds of faults, if that king is to engage in a really large act of generosity, a shining act of generosity, something that is quite a display of that generosity, that is something that is able to sort of hide all of those flaws, or it sort of surpasses all of those kinds of flaws that one might normally see. And likewise, on the other hand, just in the same way that such an act of generosity can really transform the image of a king, so too a single act of avarice, of greed, of not being of being really stingy will contradict all of his good qualities. So a king might have all kinds of good qualities, but acting in a way with that kind of avarice, that kind of stinginess, is going to sort of mask or destroy all of those good qualities. So therefore, it advises here that one should try to get rid of such stinginess, greed, avarice, and instead make an effort at generosity.
야, 다 템바마들 솔가 니도가 어떻게 길래서 숨지
Lare,
섭시도 수앙한테 템바마한테 제
lare,
인데스라. 나
lare.
숨지 소주되라.
Mm,
숨지 소주되 어때되다. 다 이게 지나는 당부 템바마한테 살아.
mm.
템바마한테 다 동아세더라. 동아데 단데 셰사르 말에.
Kiran di sungju so truk di shesa so ani ngayang di girso.
템바지 야야. 템바데 템바 다 동아되다. 그봐.
Mm,
야, 다 동아되도 마시도. 다 니바네사. 야, 어때되래. 지들 개보 니바다 진세치기 빼바다르세. 개보리야. 아니 지다 니바 망부 창치 망부 용식을 내시거라. 지다 개보 니바다세. 지다 니바 진짜 요식을 해서. 니나야 진바 세보잖아. 진바 세보 땅에 지기시거라. 진세치기 빼바다. 진바 야보지 짜침부시 담배에 나세. 라. 진바 망부와 최지 진바 미지베 진바 상세 진바를 소요하라. 그래서 강가도 좋지래. 진세치기 빼바다 견신다 청청요나 디파 명의바시 그래 배바시 그래서라. 값이야 그래서라. 배제 세부 매우시.
narera.
명의바시 그래서라. 배바다르서. 대신 중바 대다게 연대 여바 탐제 좀 대신야 sem나 첨부여나 아니 대신 중바 대다게 연대 여바도 신다 강가 명의바시 그래서 sem나 첨부다 sem나 첨다 저 고랑 톱 첨부 펜도 제베 qabla 펜도 마제베 얘나 뒤견 되게 연대 현대 예부터 반 점네 명은 받체 매부터 통그레시고라 디신 종방아 되다게 연대 독바 탐제 좀 연대 예부 참모 탐제데 명은 받체는 메디얼 통해 매가 점번나시 시그레시고라 되기도 와
되기도.
안 되는데 야
So here again for these four speaking truthfully and so forth. Speaking truthfully has two verses, and the rest have a single verse. So those two verses, then 134 and 135, deal with the importance of speaking truthfully. And then we turn in 136 to the second of these four, which is acting generously. And so, as it says, a single shining act of generosity hides the flaws of a king. So even if a king may have some sort of flaws, minor or major, engaging in a really clear, demonstrable act of generosity. And again, generosity can encompass things like giving love, giving protection, freedom from fear, giving materially, giving advice, and so forth. Those kinds of actions of generosity hide those flaws. They sort of cover over them or make them kind of non-manifest. We're able to see instead the generosity rather than focusing on those flaws, one could say. And if, on the other hand, a king or anyone, as us as well, is sort of greedy or lacks that kind of spirit of giving away, someone who has that kind of greed or stinginess, so likewise, an instant of greed will contradict all of his good qualities. So too, if we have an instance in which we are really greedy, we're really grasping on to something, that then sort of hides over, covers over all of the good qualities that one might have. So here, again, it advises that we should abandon such stinginess and make an effort in generosity.
오야 숨소데 다 녀와를 쉬어라 봐셔더라 숨버 녀와를 쉬어라 봐셔더라 다들 가르치기도 쓰나 녀와를 쉬어 사베서 초도 그버쳐 버리 요르시기도 녀와를 쉬어 가르스네 그봐 나저 왕부 고통 봐서다 매기 소제바를 이제 통난 남산티 직접 단년바다 대신발라 서버티도 왕부 때다 봐 땅에 그봐 전부 남이 전부로 같은 레시아를 세르시도 어디 가서는 녀와를 쉬어 사베서 초도 그봐 제바를 요르세 왕부 녀와를 쉬시 남준에 봐 간주마주 그바다 텐데 매게 미 사부르시 땡게지 고고도 고챙게들야 녀와를 쉬어 사베서 초도 그봐 제바를 요르세 제가 소리스는 그발라 소바로 그바다 밤에 발라 소바 쩌박한 좀 마주 제들 시고라 그바서 빵네스 근데 가르쳐 버려서 녀를 쉬어 원부 시시 들어와 제가 됐시고라 빵네 원부 양다 버 담바 원부 고통 번나시 원부가에 관에 통제 예도와 명어트 간좀 마주 봐주는 때나시 그바다 가서라 밤에 봐 주방에 맞는데 매버셔지 주방 약부지 때도 원배 고담네 시와지 약부지 때도 시고라 어디 계신 분이 있으면 녀를 시와 사베서 따도 그바 제발 요새 대연에 매참하게 되다도 그십지 그래시고라 그바 반에 원부 양다 봐 담바 녀를 시와 되여나 아니 박바르카에서 파조게 삼로 가래 당겨 가래네 처럼 되게 말와 간주만주 제게는 남전에 고처럼 되게라 고 텐데 신이 삼겨라 사부제저 엄부 고 땀네 저놈 약보지 시시 두아지 대베이나 그 삼로처럼 틱톡고 말해서 거라 삼로 박바르카에 사베치래 네 삼로 사부여라 그 가르 삼겨 가르치 시다 신다게 빡투고 말해 저 되게 말해 셰초도 그것이 완전히 그십지 그래 신다 미추 지도 그십지 그래 뒤면에 간주만 주스 때문에 미 그십에 차려라 아니 그게 님바를 그거에 시지다 된바다 가야 전라 냐와르 시와 땡제 제바와서 왔다 뒤견도 원비 고파 담네 절람 추신도 야부지 땡제 대에 계신보래서 강주만주 강가티 파체 땡땡네 미기 시자 지금 말와 통치기 말해서 그래 야 딘디도
음.
냐와르 시와 사베치 초도 그바 시바를 요르세 아니 그게 집아 까야지 아니 때께지 셔야도 좋고 가사데 시지 전부다 깔라부터 좋고 전부 매 차샤 그래서 그래 대외 냐와르 시와 때 대소다 온보 시신 때와 로아 절름 추시 담대 야부지 때에 계신보래서 아니 미게 진조 연구래서 그래 야 딘디도
Digital. So then in verse 137, it deals with sort of being pacified or tranquil. So it reads here, it is profound to be tranquil, and for its profundity, tranquility is highly respected. From respect come glory and authority, therefore devote yourself to tranquility. So those who are sort of unrestrained, who are kind of wild, they lack, they're like very much generally distracted or excited. They allow their senses to go to whatever various objects they might encounter. They are sort of easily distracted or drawn into things. Someone like that who has that kind of wildness or sort of excitability, a lack of conscientiousness, this is something that one should try to restrain the senses, should try to have a kind of a proper restraint over those senses, try to develop within oneself a kind of tranquility. So here, when one has that kind of tranquility, as opposed to being someone that is like immediately drawn to all sorts of things, sort of bouncing all over, bouncing to various different objects, it's very difficult to kind of tell what's going on in the mind of someone who is restrained, who is pacified and has tamed their senses. So here, like others who maybe are sort of wild and unconscientious and act in that way, maybe we don't know what they're going to do because they're unpredictable in a bad way. Whereas someone who is pacified, who is tranquil, has a kind of profundity in that we can't necessarily know what's going on in their mind, but they're acting in a way that is very calm and pacified, sort of restraining our senses and so forth. And from that kind of having that tranquility comes respect from others. And as it says here, from respect come glory and authority. Like your speech will be listened to. Others will sort of regard you well. And so therefore, it says, given the kind of benefits that come from the respect that one gains through being tranquil, one should make an effort to develop such tranquility.
오야 당한도 데리다 가서라 쇼르가 숨지 섭게 데려와 어여 와디 데리다 가서라 시럽 사발라바시 땅마이 던제 실랍 그래서 시럽 사발라바시 던다 연대 야보 시럽 셴예데 소소랑도다 시장에다 진고진게 가리나 뒤치조데 레가 제 가리 바다데 야보지 소소소소 셴예던 데마치 거라 미 깨져 생게 망부 요식을 년고 그래 이나 담마 타주제데 소소랑게 남주게 타주제 더치 거라 뒤에 민고고 다 두고 말에 간주마 좀 고코기 말도 어디 싫었던 데마데 랑도 시장에 이나다 가르쳐 내가 가르치나 뒤고에 아버지 소소 싫었던 데마 셴예데 소소소소야 소소소소라 랍제전에 타주제 더에 싫었던 데고래서 그라 디메나네 미담다셰 펠레셰 징고고고 아니 대신자제 띵고고고 문에 임버들 나실래가 제투 말와 미션당 고고 당그르 루고데 미션기 질라베 제선도고 그래 소스 딱딱 타주 제투 말와 어디선가 시럽 사발라바데 페케시 보레스 와라 Longbe Kebu Si Kange Inada, Jitan Chizo Leva Chinge Karina, the Sosu Shin the Yabuko, the Geshe Yeshe. Tina Gogo Tantuma, Sosu, Dembakari and Winakari, Rangzu to Wachi Tauchi Tura. Shangi members learn the mother to suggest your love to Gra. Timana love to Mari, Shanda Shilam, teacher with a song. Do you want to do that? And we need to Nashi to Mari Lega. Oh, this one. Shiram Dembe Lumi Toss. Shin Yabuchi Dembe in a mission go down the pa, low tone, all cursive cola. My imbet in the Jason Dread and the Umar, say. Ye tron is Shandafa. Lavanation Chequet and go to Dura. Shangi Timmy George dancer. Long Rangalega said the Shanley at Turgo Mother. Shangi Tangle Turmaguaja, Soso Ranga, somewhat temper touches to Gura. Or Tini Tembo Gura, Shan go to Tindamendo Coach, Timendo, some, and it's Lega Ganga Tambuche to Mother. Shangi Timmy George dancer. Louis Messu Cabo to send Cabo go down to Mother, Legachin Carina. Mission there, Shapel and Russia. Rockbada Yabuche in the Gogo Ten, never dubbing the Sivra, or Tinda Young Maresura. Louis Messu Cabote. There stood up Sulan Jersey. There's on the shale giant, so says a social lega de social Yabuche to be looked on the Yabu Yabuche, there's water. Oh, Timan and Gogo Ten, lega non do Mabuche Sivra. On the matter of London Jebe Shirap and Debade, never to security, Shangi, Gogo take Mare, Shangi want to Chine, Tende do Marera, Tebe Dove, Tebe Topola, so what the Lune, Tende Marchi to security love teachers and Dora. You got that. What in manner and so Shirap the Awu in one day. Meeting Cholet Telecon and gave a seat to the Awakam to Grace. Sulan Jersey. Should have Sulan, but there's a only somebody. So, Jenny, social Namjug, social touch to what's called as order. Now, just get a share your Conne. Tambu Pama Kiganse. Kigan Tambu the Pama Hesera. Parto Kigan against a loss of dragon the Kigari. Tamarani against social the touch to what's called. And she bought the Shadal to the Queen and the social Tata Lagatata Chetumara. Tamarani against Rangus Lobson Sheba the Rang touch the Manura Yabuche to Skoyara. Yeah, what did this?
So then next is training in wisdom is really whatever kind of work it is that we want to do in society, we need to, I mean, occasionally, yes, we consult others, we discuss with them how to do something, but we need to have our own sort of education, our own wisdom, which allows us to make determinations with our own wisdom. So here again, although of course we need to learn from others and sometimes we consult others, we need to develop the kind of knowledge, the kind of education and wisdom for ourselves to be able to really know what is right and what is wrong and so forth. And so having wisdom, having education, we could say, is something that is really important. So here in verse 138, it then says, by being wise, your mind will not waver, not dependent on the opinion of others. You will be steadfast, king, and not deceived. Therefore, devote yourself to wisdom. So here, when we have developed our own kind of education or knowledge or understanding, then we have the wisdom such that we're unwavering, like we're able to become conclude, make determinations based upon our own wisdom. So we're not sort of swayed by others, or nor are we sort of dependent upon the opinion of others, like needing to rely upon others, because we know that we have the ability to determine, say, what is right and what is wrong, what should be abandoned and what should be adopted, and so forth. And so when it comes to having this kind of wisdom, when one is endowed with that sort of wisdom that is able to distinguish between what one should adopt and what should be abandoned, you're not able to be sort of swayed, stolen away by the thoughts of others, their ways of thinking. And you have a kind of reliability, stability, in that you don't have to depend upon the opinions of others. Like you're able to conclude, oh, this is what it is, and act accordingly, rather than turning to someone else to say, well, is this how it is? Or needing their opinion in order to proceed. And so too, one who has that kind of wisdom and that doesn't need to depend upon the opinion of others or look to others to try to figure out what is right or what is wrong, then you can't be deceived or led astray by others. When you have that kind of confidence, that sort of inner wisdom, and have a good education, this is something where one isn't going to be subject to the sway of, say, non-virtuous friends, those who might encourage you to act in a way that is not according to the Dharma and so forth. And so here, this is advice, of course, directed at the king. And so a king who has that kind of wisdom, who is able to determine for himself, of course, there are times we consult others, but having that ability to suss out for ourselves without needing to rely upon someone else or look to someone else for their opinion. This is something that is very important. And a king particularly can rule well only when they have that kind of a wisdom. And so we need to have that sort of clarity that says, oh, I can determine, I can understand this for myself without sort of being swayed by others, having to rely upon them or be deceived by them and so forth. And so there is a saying in Tibetan that your first teacher are your parents, right? Your first teachers are your parents. In the middle of your life, your teachers are your teachers, those that are actually giving you advice. But in the later part of your life, you need to be your teacher, right? So we learn from others. We learn first from our parents, then from other teachers. But then we need to gain that kind of stability and confidence in our own wisdom and our own ability to determine that, to determine what is right and what is wrong, or what we should and shouldn't do, and so forth. And so here, having this kind of wisdom that is impervious to, say, bad influences from non-virtuous friends, this is something that is very important for us to willingly take up, this kind of practice of wisdom.
Oh, yeah. Talk about some so good, ma. Oh, yes, some so good. Yeah, tell you about your pay, Juliet ambassador, station of Page. Some so
Marige,
good. Marva.
du de tempa, sunju so guba de dendong chi dan sherab te.
Some so good, ra.
Mm.
Dendong shita, how did Niba in academy shita. Or Niba. Some so good. Yeah. Do the ambassador, sincero.
Nare.
Himbacha. Talk Karsidosina. Temba Toa than Yara Shiva, Shirab, Chushibu Sanction. Temba all timber, Tadida. Tendo Tembacha Toa Chera, Shiva Shirab, Tendo Shita Shirabta, Sambushin dance, Sambushin den Miwanis, Tishita Dembe Gabutisura, Miombune. Chosa number Shitabur. Chosa number Shitabur. La Minamji, Tabarjur, Madrovish. Chosa number Shitabu, and a Minamjane called Tabaju Desigora. Tatan Dakar Sudasna, Temba, Tangdin, Tembascoda. Some Nachimba Toa, Shigode. Shiti Shoa, Mishua, Chikoyara. Shirot and Demba Shiko, Yare, Sera. Oh, Tetabu, you then shit like Kembe, and then Mete. Sangbu number shit and Dembe. Dembanam töver jur stille, Shanam de töver jurese. Church Tesson dan, church shit and Demban Zocius, Gabola Tambasera. Teaser. Kasumba Troy Kebers and the Cheni. You know. Yeah. 단된데라. 다 somba 도제버서 대체서로 처음에다 버쳐서 다 당보 최폐의 주 개발 시다 담발라 도버 차대서 어떤데 최폐의 주 개발 시다 담발 담고래서도 가르도스는 숨발lesum 말을 사드베 야 아저는 딜리아샤샤나 카메라 숨지 소도 뭐 숨지 sobjede 차송아
소구 찼어.
Sunchusogu sana digire.
숨지
Some
sobjede 다 숨지 쏘고 딜레송아 대인다야 다는 다 샤쇼네 저저저샤 숨지 쏘고 야
So here we're gonna have to stop Geshe from continuing on too far. But here then we teach we have a summary of those four qualities in verse 139, where it says then that truth, generosity, tranquility, and wisdom. A king who has these four excellent qualities will be praised by gods and humans, just like these four excellent dharmas. So these are things that a king, as well as us, we should try to train in. Someone who has such qualities, truth, generosity, tranquility, and wisdom, will be praised by gods and humans, just like those four excellent dharmas. We see those four things as being something that is praiseworthy. And so therefore, someone who has those, who possesses those, like a king, is someone who will receive praise from gods and humans. So really to make an effort at speaking truthfully, to not have the kind of greed or avarice, but instead be someone who is generous, to be tranquil as opposed to sort of wild and unruly, and have the kind of discriminating wisdom. Having those four qualities is something that is praiseworthy. So we will leave it there for today.
Okay. Can put our picture up. There we go. Thank you very much, Ginlan, for these very practical teachings.
야
Yep. And thank you, Katina, for your beautiful translation. Next week, the Abbey will be in a Vajrasattva retreat, so we'll meet again on the 12th of January, 2026. And so we'll end with some dedication prayers.
May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path and all spiritual friends who practice it have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Lovesome's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the three worlds always increase. Idam Guru Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May the born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
야
윤전이 제일 아재영요.